But his fame now extended beyond Rome, and repeated invitations were sent him to return to Paris. He was offered the appointment of principal painter to the king. At first he hesitated. Quoted the Italian proverb, "Chi station bene non si muove." Said he had lived 15 years in Rome, married a wife there, and looked forward to dying and being buried there. Urged again, he consented, and returned to Paris. But his appearance there awakened much professional jealousy, and he soon wished himself back in Rome again. While in Paris he painted some of his greatest works, his Saint Saviour, the Baptism, and the Last Supper. He was kept constantly at work. At first he did whatever he was asked to do, such as designing frontispieces for the royal books, more particularly a Bible and a Virgil, cartoons for the Louvre, and designs for tapestry. But at length he expostulated. "It is impossible for me," he said to M.D. Chanteloup, "to work at the same time at frontispieces for books, at a Virgin, at a picture of the Congregation of St. Louis, at the various designs for the gallery, and, finally, at designs for the royal tapestry. I have only one pair of hands and a feeble head, and can neither be helped nor can my labors be lightened by another." Annoyed by the enemies his success had provoked and whom he was unable to conciliate, he determined, at the end of less than 2 years' labor in Paris, to return to Rome. Again settled there in his humble dwelling on Monte Pincio, he employed himself diligently in the practice of his art during the remaining years of his life, living in great simplicity and privacy. Though suffering much from the disease which afflicted him, he solaced himself by study, always striving after excellence. "In growing old," he said, "I feel myself becoming more and more inflamed with the desire of surpassing myself and reaching the highest degree of perfection." Thus toiling, struggling, and suffering, Poussin spent his later years. He had no children. His wife died before him. All his friends were gone, so that in his old age, he was left absolutely alone in Rome, so full of tombs, and died there in 1665, bequeathing to his relatives at Andelys the savings of his life, amounting to about 1,000 crowns, and leaving behind him, as a legacy to his race, the great works of his genius. The career of Ary Scheffer furnishes one of the best examples in modern times of a like high-minded devotion to art. Born at Dordrecht, the son of a German artist, he early manifested an aptitude for drawing and painting, which his parents encouraged. His father dying while he was still young, his mother resolved, though her means were but small, to remove the family to Paris, in order that her son might obtain the best opportunities for instruction. Their young Scheffer was placed with Guérin the painter. But his mother's means were too limited to permit him to devote himself exclusively to study. She had sold the few jewels she possessed, and refused herself every indulgence, in order to forward the instruction of her other children. Under such circumstances, it was natural that Ary should wish to help her. And by the time he was 18 years of age he began to paint small pictures of simple subjects, which met with a ready sale at moderate prices. He also practiced portrait painting, at the same time gathering experience and earning honest money. He gradually improved in drawing, coloring, and composition. The Baptism marked a new epoch in his career, and from that point he went on advancing, until his fame culminated in his pictures illustrative of Faust, his Francisca di Rimini, Therese the Consoler, the Holy Women, Saint Monica and Saint Augustine, and many other noble works. "The amount of labor, thought, and attention," says Mrs. Grote, "which Scheffer brought to the production of the Francisca, must have been enormous." In truth, his technical education having been so imperfect, he was forced to climb the steep of art by drawing upon his own resources, and thus, whilst his hand was at work, his mind was engaged in meditation. He had to try various processes of handling, and experiments in coloring. To paint and repaint, with tedious and unremitting assiduity. But nature had endowed him with that which proved in some sort an equivalent for shortcomings of a professional kind. His own elevation of character, and his profound sensibility, aided him in acting upon the feelings of others through the medium of the pencil. One of the artists whom Schoeffer most admired was Flaxman. And he once said to a friend, "If I have unconsciously borrowed from anyone in the design of the Francisca, it must have been from something I had seen among Flaxman's drawings." John Flaxman was the son of a humble seller of plaster casts in New Street, Covent Garden. When a child, he was such an invalid that it was his custom to sit behind his father's shop counter propped by pillows, amusing himself with drawing and reading. A benevolent clergyman, the Reverend Mr. Matthews, calling at the shop one day, saw the boy trying to read a book, and on inquiring what it was, found it to be a Cornelius Nepos, which his father had picked up for a few pence at a bookstall. The gentleman, after some conversation with the boy, said that was not the proper book for him to read, but that he would bring him one. The next day he called with translations of Homer and Don Quixote, which the boy proceeded to read with great avidity. His mind was soon filled with the heroism which breathed through the pages of the former, and, with the stucco Ajaxes and Achilleses about him, ranged along the shop shelves, the ambition took possession of him, that he too would design and embody in poetic forms those majestic heroes. Like all youthful efforts, his first designs were crude. The proud father one day showed some of them to Roubiliac the sculptor, who turned from them with a contemptuous shaw. But the boy had the right stuff in him. He had industry and patience. And he continued to labor incessantly at his books and drawings. He then tried his young powers in modeling figures in plaster of Paris, wax, and clay. Some of these early works are still preserved, not because of their merit, but because they are curious as the first healthy efforts of patient genius. It was long before the boy could walk, and he only learned to do so by hobbling along upon crutches. At length he became strong enough to walk without them. The kind Mr. Matthews invited him to his house, where his wife explained Homer and Milton to him. They helped him also in his self-culture, giving him lessons in Greek and Latin, the study of which he prosecuted at home. By dint of patience and perseverance, his drawing improved so much that he obtained a commission from a lady, to execute 6 original drawings in black chalk of subjects in Homer. His first commission. What an event in the artist's life! A surgeon's first fee, a lawyer's first retainer, a legislator's first speech, a singer's first appearance behind the footlights, an author's first book, are not any of them more full of interest to the aspirant for fame than the artist's first commission. The boy at once proceeded to execute the order, and he was both well praised and well paid for his work. At 15 Flaxman entered a pupil at the Royal Academy. Notwithstanding his retiring disposition, he soon became known among the students, and great things were expected of him. Nor were their expectations disappointed. In his 15th year he gained the silver prize, and next year he became a candidate for the gold one. Everybody prophesied that he would carry off the medal, for there was none who surpassed him in ability and industry. Yet he lost it, and the gold medal was adjudged to a pupil who was not afterwards heard of. This failure on the part of the youth was really of service to him. For defeats do not long cast down the resolute-hearted, but only serve to call forth their real powers. "Give me time," said he to his father, "and I will yet produce works that the Academy will be proud to recognize." He redoubled his efforts, spared no pains, designed and modeled incessantly, and made steady if not rapid progress. But meanwhile poverty threatened his father's household. The plaster cast trade yielded a very bare living. And young Flaxman, with resolute self-denial, curtailed his hours of study, and devoted himself to helping his father in the humble details of his business. He laid aside his Homer to take up the plaster trowel. He was willing to work in the humblest department of the trade so that his father's family might be supported, and the wolf kept from the door. To this drudgery of his art he served a long apprenticeship. But it did him good. It familiarized him with steady work, and cultivated in him the spirit of patience. The discipline may have been hard, but it was wholesome.